Hey, Team Healthy. Glad to have you here today. So, all right, I see already that some of you are talking about this being my last live feed. And the answer is, yeah, that's right. And I'm going to explain that to you in just a second. Don't worry about it because I'm not going to be going away and all like that. So, what I'm doing is obviously I do these on Wednesdays, and next Wednesday is Christmas. The weekend after that, week after that is New Year's. We're going to do a little change in format. One of the things that we found is that there are quite a number of individuals who don't even access at all the live feeds. And there's a different tab for live than there are just for the regular videos. And then an extremely high percentage of the people who watch these live feeds watch the tape recording. Tape recording is just my way of saying I'm old because I don't know what to call it when you do this and then you upload it. And anyway, so we do the tape recording. So that being the case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue because I'm going to continue receiving your questions. One of the reasons that we began doing the live feed is because I wanted to hear from you so that I could respond in a very specific way to whatever's going on in your world in a very personal kind of way. And I'm going to continue to receive your questions. I mean, I pick up on, I don't know how many per week, but a lot. And I'm going to start calling the series Unbound. As opposed to being bound in a trauma bond with a narcissist, how to break free from all of that. So, Unbound. And the new Unbound presentations are going to be on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock Central Time, as opposed to 11 Central Time US on Wednesdays, and then 10 o'clock Central Time on Saturdays. And so I'm going to make them the same length as my regular videos. And that way it's going to be more accessible, frankly, to a lot larger number of people. But we're still going to do the same thing. And then in addition, what it does is it allows me to take a little bit more time and to pull in some questions and elaborate on it a little bit more fully than I tend to do here, because I tend to have a larger number of questions here. So the Unbound series on Wednesdays and Saturdays are going to give me a chance to do the same thing, but in just a little bit of a different format. So just let's shift. We're just simply growing and expanding and evolving and all, and that's part of it. So but I so like hearing from you and knowing what your situation is, and I want to continue to do that. So what it means is I'm going to be uploading regular videos on on Mondays and Thursdays. We're going to do Unbound with the questions on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and then the other days I'm going to be producing shorts. Those are 60-second videos, and so that's going to give some sort of feed for you every single day, and hopefully we're just going to keep something going here. So and it's going to begin on January the 4th. That's a Saturday, and then I'll be doing that on and on throughout, and we're going to keep that up as a new feature. So same concept of receiving questions, a little bit of a different format. That's all. Don't worry about it, and you can still do your chats whenever I do all the rest. So I so appreciate you guys, and frankly, those of you who are here on the live feeds. Y'all are the core of Team Healthy. I hope you understand that. I'm deeply appreciative of you. So I have a good slate of questions here, and I'm going to dive right in with you, and we're going to see where it leads us. The first question. And by the way, I like to do a theme. The theme here that we've got is learning how to stay strong even when narcissists offer you invalidation. It's like, yeah, I'll feed you a lot today. I'm going to feed you some rejection. I'll feed you some invalidation. I'll feed you some criticism. Want some more? I've got lots of it. So that's what we're going to be talking about. This person says, Dr. C, I could use some suggestions on dealing with mutual friends when the narcissist tries to turn them against you. What do you say without looking like I'm bad-mouthing the narcissist? Questions like, what's happening with you and the narcissist? And acquaintances who they butter up and try to make me look uncharitable. So, and this is not at all an unusual situation. Basically, you're referring to the narcissist tactic of trying to maintain power through what we call triangulation. Triangulation means that I'm going to bring in other people. So let's say that I'm the narcissist. I hope I'm not, but let's say for pretend's sake I'm the narcissist, and I've got a grudge against you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in this person over here, and I'll say, did you know that something's going on here that I'm really concerned about? And it doesn't feel good at all. And then, so I'm going to let other people have a bad impression of you and then sit back and just watch it play out. And I may triangulate and do it with a whole bunch of different people. And it's a hidden smear campaign and all the rest. So then you wind up catching wind of that. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. That narcissist is saying some really lousy things, and someone comes to you and says, I think we have a problem here. So then your question is, well, how strongly do you defend yourself? And this is kind of tricky because you have to know who you're talking with and where they're coming from. Are they being constructive? Are they being inquisitive so that they can do some data gathering? Are they flying monkeys? Are they just trying to size up whether they're going to reject you or not? I mean, so you kind of have to get a lay of the land there. So there's not one fixed way that you can handle this. So when you know that you're being smeared by the narcissist, and then you're discussing this with the person who's receiving the smear campaign, proceed with caution. Now, one of the things that we don't want to do, if you're involved in something like this, is you don't want to go into a super high defensive mode. What is the narcissist trying to accomplish by speaking ill of you to other individuals? And the answer is they want to make you look stupid. They want to make you look foolish. They want to make you look inadequate. And so, if you come across to that person who's being triangulated in, if you come across as just unraveled and unhinged and agitated, then all that's going to do is it's going to play right into the narcissist's hand. That person is going to be thinking, "Oh, there's some real turmoil here that and dysfunction. I didn't know about it. Glad I see it. Maybe the narcissist is right." And so you've heard me use the term calm firmness or calm confidence. There can come a time where you're going to know I need to draw upon that right now. I'm comfortable with who I am, and even when I make mistakes, or if there's something that I've said or done that was not my finest hour, I'm quite capable of making adjustments and learning from it. So I know me well enough to know that I do respond to conflict or mistakes constructively. Keep in mind the mark of a healthy person is not the absence of mistakes or the absence of or the presence of perfection, but just knowing how to handle conflict and knowing how to handle growth in a constructive kind of way. So my first thing is I would go to that, or I would say to that person, they're saying, "Hey, Mr. Narcissist, Mrs. Narcissist over here is saying some pretty disparaging things." I'd seek some assistance rather than saying, "Well, they're always complaining." Nope. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say something like, and this is the therapist in me, help me understand what we're dealing with. Because as a therapist, when I hear stuff, I know there's a bigger backstory. Let's figure out what that is. What's the context of what you're talking about? Because obviously I wasn't there. I don't know what the situation is. Can you help me know, what you're hearing and what your reaction is, and exactly what the whole point of that conversation was? Because then I can discuss this with you more in an informed kind of way. And what it does is it puts that other person on notice. That says, if you think you're going to do some sort of a gossipy or tattletaling kind of a thing, I'm not into that. I honestly want to be objective in this. And then the more reasonable you are, and the more objective you are, then you automatically, hopefully, will have greater credibility. And then it might be, and it all depends on the level of closeness or how much you really care about that person who's confronting you about what the narcissist says. It might be that you will need to give some explanation. None of us likes to feel defensive. But there are times when you need to defend in the sense that says, may I offer you a different explanation? And then you have to be real careful about how far you want to go. I'm all into self-disclosure and openness and vulnerability, as long as I feel that that person in front of me is trustworthy. And so there are times when it may be that you'll say, the narcissist and I did in fact have some difficulty, and it didn't end well. Or it may be that you'll say, what you're saying catches me off guard. I'm not sure how I'm going to manage this. I need to think it through. But you want to be very careful that you don't go into character assassination and use the tactics that the narcissist will. For example, you don't want to just berate the narcissist and tell that person how stupid that individual is, and then put that individual in the middle. But it would be more appropriate to let it be known calmly. I appreciate you bringing your concerns. Let me think it through, and I want to just kind of gather my thoughts and maybe get a little bit further information from where that other person is coming from, because inevitably you're not hearing the entire story. But in other words, just be judicious. So there's a combination of caution and openness, vulnerability, and a certain amount of healthy defensiveness that's there. That's a tough one, but that's that triangulation thing is something that narcissists love to do over and over. Okay, this is an interesting one here. Why do some covert communal narcissists have an apparent dislike of someone expressing appreciation? Okay, usually it's they don't like you expressing complaints. They have a dislike for someone expressing appreciation when they've done something that's actually helpful, as if being complimented is a negative thing. It seems that they view it as an annoyance. Okay, this is a great question. So you have a situation where that person who tends to have a reputation of narcissism has actually done something very nice, and you want to draw attention to that, and you want to be an encourager, and you say, hey, when you did that really did help me out a lot. I really appreciate when you do it that way, and when you show some regard. Thank you so much. What you're doing is you're bringing yourself into an open and vulnerable kind of a place for that person, and the narcissist is thinking, oh, wait a minute. You want me to match pitch, don't you? You want me to show kindness in reverse now that you're saying kind things to me. Huh. Is that what the deal is? And they think competitively. You've heard me say before that narcissism tends to be a byproduct of some paranoia. It's like, okay, so what did you really mean by that? It shows how demented their way of thinking can be when you come along and say, well, you see, I just have a compliment I'm trying to give you, nothing more, nothing less. If the narcissist could be honest, what they would say is, well, to me, compliments are a tool. Compliments are part of my gaslighting. Compliments are part of mine trying to get favor from you. And I don't sense that that's what you're doing. I don't think I like this. And so you're inviting them into a more healthy and even humble form of communication. For example, if you do something nice, the narcissist is going to think, by receiving your kind remarks, that puts me in the subservient role. That doesn't, but that's how they think. And so it's a fascinating box that they find themselves painted in. They've kind of painted themselves in the corner. I can be kind and friendly and encouraging because it's just my love bombing, and it's my gaslighting, and it's all the other manipulative stuff. But when you do it, and it seems to have either you're doing the same thing to me, or there's an absence, and I don't know how to do that. And so, in their competitive approach towards relationships, they forget there are some people, we call ourselves Team Healthy, who, when they offer a compliment, they mean it as a compliment. There's no hidden agenda. And so you might as well be speaking Swahili to them, because it's like, I don't do that psychological language. So that's why you've received such an odd kind of situation. It's humorous in its own strange way, because you're looked upon with suspicion for being healthy. I don't do healthy. Now, again, they don't have that kind of self-awareness and honesty, but that's what's really going on. And it's kind of interesting. So anyway, I wanted to make sure I got that one on here today. Okay. Now, the next one, we're talking about narcissists giving invalidation. This person asks, how can I stay strong in my own self affirmation when the narcissist continues to tear me down? Isn't it amazing that the narcissist has decided, well, let's see, in this relationship, we need a judge. We need somebody who's going to pronounce correctness and incorrectness, right and wrong. Who's that judge going to be? Let's see. Oh, I volunteer. And so they'll appoint themselves as being the judge over you. It's not up to a vote. It's not something that they say, would you mind if I just judged you? I mean, I've got lots of judgments. They're not going to be that straightforward. They've just arbitrarily assumed the position. I need to judge you. And so part of what, as you're trying to respond to their judgments, which are inevitably going to be in their favor and your disfavor, you first have to ask the question, well, wait a minute. Because that person has appointed themselves as judge over me, well, does that mean that I'm obligated to receive that person's judgment? You're the one sitting on the bench, and I'm the defendant over here in the dock, and I'm supposed to defend myself against it. And it's a game. And so when you ask, how do I stay strong in my self affirmation when they're over there judging, they want to tear you down. I think the question is, well, did I even have a vote in this? And now, when you ask how do you respond or how do you stay strong, one of the first things you don't do is go into the point counterpoint game. The narcissist says, "Well, I just think you're awful and you're terrible," and then you feel like you have to defend yourself. No, I'm not, and here's the 4 reasons why. Or you can plead your case. There's the 3 no's that I say that you don't want to go into at a time like this. No pleading, no coaxing, no convincing. So the narcissist is over here tearing you down and just, please don't do this, or come on, we can do better than this. And why do you have to talk to me like that? Pleading, coaxing, convincing. Instead, you might ask, well, just because the person has pronounced themselves the judge, what is my obligation? And the answer is not. I don't have an obligation to that person in that realm. What I want to do is I want to exercise my independent thinking, and this takes a discipline on your part because the narcissist is counting on you to get sucked in to the mood of the moment, subjectivity instead of objectivity. Objectivity says, well, let's see. You deem me to be no good, and as I examine myself, I think, well, I'm a bag of pluses and minuses, but on the whole, I'm pretty pleased with who I am, and I like how I process things, and I'm committed to growth. Therefore, I don't really think your judgment is A, fair, and B, wait a minute, there's so many things about you we could turn around and judge you on. It's just nonsensical. And so I just don't feel the need to get into that game. And then I'm hoping, and this is part of what we describe as your boundaries, I'm hoping you can pull back and say, I need to have a predetermined understanding of who I am, what defines me, and what characteristics are going to be most central to my being. How do I want to engage with other individuals? And so you have a well conceived definition of a healthy you. And so when the narcissist comes along and in their unhealthiness says, well, I need to tear you down so that I can build myself up, which is what they're doing. The objective person says, that doesn't compute for me. That's your game. I'm not going to join you in that. And so I'm hoping that you can release the narcissist from the requirement of dropping their judgmentalism, because they won't. But I release you. You can judge all you want, but you see, I don't look at you as my judge. I'm not into that. And so it's a matter of you asking, where does my sense of well-being comes from? And it comes from your own internal reflection. It comes from you having a sense of purpose and meaning that comes from other kinds of resources, not the narcissist. The narcissist is not God over you, and they don't have the permission or the right, even though they claim all of that, to say, my pronouncement is final. No, it's not. Okay. Um, Now, this is another one because it talks about covert scapegoating, and I want to make sure you understand what that is. This person says, I'd really like to hear your thoughts about commonalities and the long term prospects for those who have been covertly scapegoated from their family of origin, mostly, for refusing to enable any intergenerational, prolonged, harmful, toxic behaviors within that family's dynamics. So, first of all, good for you that as you are engaging with your extended family, that you've developed enough awareness where you think, these people. When you talk about a communal narcissism, these people have kind of decided, well, we're just going to go ahead and participate in this strong group think. There may be one or two primary narcissists, and the others are over there nodding their head. And so there can be just this agreement that says, well, we stand for bigotry. We stand for judgmentalism. We stand for exclusivity. If you don't think like us, get out of here. You're not in the club. And you're over there thinking, well, life doesn't need to be that way. I don't want to be bigoted or prejudiced or judgmental or exclusive. And if you're not exactly like me, then you're not in my club. I want to be open and I want to be kind, and I don't want to just size people up and criticize them and judge them like the rest of you. And so when you realize that they don't care for you, then first it's that my response to you then is good for you. Now, when we talk about scapegoating, covert scapegoating is, let's say you're not going to be included. They wind up having a gathering and you didn't get the invitation. Or it may be that they'll talk about you behind your back, or they'll do some things that just make you look foolish. Like you know, there's going to be a potluck dinner, and they don't tell you, hey, you need to bring some vegetables. And then when you show up with nothing, it's like, what's wrong with you? You didn't contribute, did you? I mean, that kind of stuff. That's the covert scapegoating, and they'll guaranteed they will talk about you behind your back. And so when you ask, how are you going to respond to this covert scapegoating? My immediate reaction, and I don't mean to be sarcastic, I mean it honestly. Good. You notice that I think differently. You notice that I'm not in your prejudiced or judgmental or finicky or emotionally dysregulated manner of life. Thank you for noticing. You don't need to necessarily say that out loud. And then I'm hoping there can be a mindset that says, I'm really glad that I have enough awareness that I don't get sucked into that. That's not something that I agree with. If I'm going to be with people, my people, I want them to be individuals who are committed to something other than deviousness and self-protection at other people's expense. And so I see that you've noticed that I'm not like you. I'll take that as a backhanded compliment and move on. And so, by the way, there's a word that describes where you are that also describes what they're threatened by, and it's the word independence, or in other words, freedom and independence, same concept. They're threatened by your independent thinking. I'm thinking, my thought is, well, isn't that a good thing? No, you have to lay down your independent thoughts and just pick up on our groupthink here. And good for you that you choose not to, because and just know the price is I will be scapegoated by them through lack of inclusion and all of that in their little club. It's like, okay. Um, remember the Groucho Marx comment? Why would I want to be in a club where they want to choose me? I don't want to be in that club anyway. So that's kind of where we're going to be coming from. Y'all know who Groucho Marx is? Anyway. Okay, another question. This person asked, does a narcissist weigh relationships in terms of whether or not the person is a liability? Interesting you say liability as opposed to asset. And the answer is yes. And when I say interesting, I don't say it's a wrong thing. In other words, is there something wrong with you? Are you going to hold me back? That's the liability part. Let's keep in mind that one of the most common patterns that we see with narcissists, and is pretty exclusive across the board, is that they are transactional in the way that they engage with you. In other words, they want something from you, and if you give them whatever it is they want, they're happy. And if you act in such a way that builds up their fragile ego, then it's like this is a good deal. And so when you come along and say, well, I'm my own separate person, and we don't think the same, immediately they hear one word, and that is rejection. Oh, so you're different from me. That means you reject me. And your thought can be, no, I'm not rejecting you. I'm just simply saying there are times when I have different preferences or interpretations or opinions or priorities. Nothing more, nothing less. This is not a rejection. It's just me establishing my distinction. And then when they feel like there's a gap as a result between them and you, they're thinking, well, yeah, if there's a gap, it's your fault, as opposed to saying, I'm glad we have a wide array of people inside our group here who think differently and who have different perspectives or priorities. And we can probably learn from each other. This years ago, there was an organization that I was in, and I had very high regard for the leader. And one of the things that he said was, when I have to set up committees for blah, 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 whatever kind of topic we're looking at, I like to make sure that inside my committee, I have people on both sides of the spectrum. And lots of times, you know where people come from, because I want to make sure that we have healthy discussions about who we are and where we're going, because sometimes we need somebody that comes in and says, well, I've got a different angle. And as long as we can do it in a collegial kind of way, then we're going to get somewhere. Narcissists think, well, when I get a committee, I want a bunch of yes people. And so if you come into my group, whether it's a family or work setting or social setting, and you show yourself to be not willing to prop them up, you are that liability. And again, it goes back to that other one about the being the covert scapegoat. They think transaction. You're not giving me what I want, therefore you're a drag on my life. When in fact, it's like you don't even see I can actually be positive, because they're not secure enough to think that way. They're so insecure that they have to have people say, "Oh, great master, you're the one who thinks right. If I ever deviate from you, I apologize in advance." I mean, that's a bit of exaggeration. That's kind of the way they go. Okay. This next one, I haven't had one quite like this before, although it gets into addictions. This person says, I'm curious to know if a child who has parents who are frequently stoned from cannabis will experience trauma. It would seem that this disconnect could be felt by infants, toddlers, little children. Interesting question. So apparently you have mom and or dad who, and maybe there's a whole team of folks who just sit around smoking weed, and you got these little kids that are going around, and mom and dad may be over there just stroking out over being high and just enjoying that, and who knows what goes along with it. Can this be considered abuse? And the answer is, yeah, it can. Now, see, we often think of abuse in terms of loud shouting and hitting and all of that. That's certainly abuse, and sexual abuse and things like that. But there's also such a thing as passive aggressive abuse, and that's what you're referring to here. Passive aggressiveness may not may come out. It's like, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm just going to be over here, and I'm not going to pay any attention to you. You don't really matter that much to me. Or if you have needs in the moment, I'll do the absolute minimum that I have to, because I'm into me and I'm not really into you. And so the sense that I get from this question is, you have individuals, adults, who are too into their own self gratification, that they just don't tend to the child. And my response to all of that is, keep in mind that everything you do communicates something. And when you are so busy getting high or doing your thing and being with your pals, to the extent that the kids are left behind, then it sends the message: you're a bother, I consider you to be a nuisance. You're not worth my time. I could help you, but why would I want to do that? And all of that is in an unspoken, covert kind of way, and the child may not be uh, articulate enough to be able to pull it together like that. But that's what's being communicated. Keep in mind that when we talk about the passive aggressive person, it has the word aggressive in it. And when we say aggressive, that person who's sending the message of disinterest is establishing their needs while invalidating you. It's just not in the loud kind of way. And it creates a feeling of punishment on the behalf of the child. Do I not matter? Or futility? I guess what I do, who I am, doesn't matter. And so the adult can be conveying to the child, "Hey, look, I quit. I quit on you. I'm just going to give you the minimum, if that." And so you get that message over and over and over. And yes, it's going to be traumatizing. Many of you know that my brother's a forensic psychologist, and he does testing with the bad boy cases in the criminal system. And many of them were either on the receiving end of very strong overt abuse, and many of them were on the receiving end of neglect. And sometimes it involved drugs and who knows what for mom and dad. But that's a very common theme, unfortunately, with some people. So, yes, that's the same thing as trauma, because the kid doesn't know what to do. They're just left. They can have fear, they can have dread, and all that goes into it. It's just brought to them in a different kind of venue. That's pretty sad. And it makes you wonder, well, why do you bring children into this world when you are not willing to take responsibility? That's a whole other story. But narcissism is all about people not taking responsibility and just going their own selfish ways. We each just tend to have different ways that we do it. Okay, now I've got another question here. I don't know that I've addressed this or not. I wonder how many of you have heard of EMDR. I'll explain that in just a minute. This person asked the question, how do you recover after you get away from the narcissist? And what are some of the daily steps to take? And then the question is EMDR helpful with trauma? Now, EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Now, back in the good old days, we didn't have computers and things like that. We had what was called progressive desensitization. I remember I had a professor back in my undergraduate days at Baylor, and he would show us how desensitization works. You get yourself in a very quiet kind of position, and you just kind of go into a very relaxed state, and you progressively take yourself into relaxation. And then in a therapeutic kind of way, the therapist then would say, let's talk about, you're going to be around this person or around this situation. And they start bringing in the negative situation while you're in that state of relaxation. And then as you tense, then they bring you back down into relaxation. And they teach you to learn how to associate calmness with the difficult situation. It's a multi-tiered kind of a thing. I'm giving it in short term. The EMDR is a more sophisticated way to do that. Often it's done with computers where you have stimulations where you look over here, you look over here, and you look up and look down, and you have these beautiful scenes and all, and then you have introduction of the same kind of thing, the traumatic kind of situations, and then you learn to associate your own calmness with the difficulties, and it kind of rewires your brain, so to speak, and gets you out of that loop where the amygdala is just firing things off left and right. Now, and again, I'm not giving it in the fullest context, because it's far more complicated than that. Is EMDR helpful in the treatment of trauma? My approach, now I may not be the same as everybody else is. I look at EMDR as an adjunct. I actually, in the practice I had in the Dallas, Texas area, for a while, we had a person who did EMDR and reported good success with patients like that. And so, and I've had familiarity with other individuals. It's become pretty popular right now. But it's kind of more of a behavioral technique which is fine. But then in addition, as you get yourself to the point to where you have a little bit less of that fight or flight kind of reaction, and more of a sense of calm, then I think it's also helpful and most necessary to go into insight oriented therapy. And so, because that too is something that needs to be processed. So I don't think of it as one or the other, but sometimes different modalities of counseling can be beneficial. Uh, all right, now the next question. We're going back and talking about narcissists when they invalidate. This person asked the question: is it possible to be vulnerable in front of a narcissist? For example, if they provide input, but you don't want to invite more criticism. So the question is it possible to be vulnerable in front of a narcissist? Yeah, it's possible. You can do it if you want to. I think the deeper question is it wise to be vulnerable in front of a narcissist? Keeping in mind they're game players. For example, the narcissist gives you input, and then as you are receiving that input, and then you begin talking about your reactions to it or your feelings about it, you begin realizing, well, they've got an agenda here, and I don't know if I'm saying the right thing. I'm exposing myself, and this may lead towards harshness or criticism or rolling of the eyes or rejection of some form. So, is it reasonable? Is it wise to be vulnerable in front of a narcissist? Unfortunately, once you begin realizing that this is an individual who's constantly playing that one up, one down kind of game, then the simplest of self revelations can come against you. And so it really comes down to, is this a safe person? I like the idea of being vulnerable. I'll give you an example. Not that long ago, I was talking with a friend of mine who was discussing a family member who turned out to be an incredibly difficult person. One of these people that had a real nice veneer, but behind the scenes, there were a whole lot more going on. And he was making himself vulnerable to me and explaining, how it affected him and other family members. And I like when somebody's that way toward me. And if I had a similar situation where I felt like I needed to process it, I like having a friend that I could sit down and say, "Hey, can I talk with you about something?" And so vulnerability is part of developing intimacy. Narcissists don't do intimacy. They do transactions. We go back to that. And they're constantly trying to figure out, what do I have to do to be on the high side of you? And so when you share your vulnerabilities, they're thinking, oh, I'm collecting some data now and I can use this against me. So maybe short term, they'll say, well, tell me more. Oh, this is interesting. Or what else happened? What was next? But then later on, you might be shamed for it, or you might be scorned, like, well, you've got all these broken relationships in your life anyway. Why would I listen to you? And so your vulnerability can then later come back and bite you in the backside. And so I'm thinking, if you know that this is somebody who's an exploiter and a user, then proceed with caution. Just keep it functional. Now, if you over time, if you've learned that somebody has the ability to process with you, and they're willing to be vulnerable in a very healthy way with you, then continue to go down there. But this is why we say give yourself time before you go deeper and deeper into that vulnerability. Narcissists like to suck you in pretty quickly. Oh, please be vulnerable with me. Tell me all the things. So they'll try to tell you some personal things, like things from their past that didn't work out well. You only find out later on it was just a complaint session about the other person and they're the victim. That's how they work it. So just proceed with caution. They'll take your vulnerability and unfortunately, they'll take something good and turn it into something negative toward you. I mean, isn't it sad that we have to think this way? Okay, another one. That I talk quite a bit about anger with narcissists, and part of my understanding of narcissism arose from me having a deep history of doing anger workshops and books and things like that. This person asked the question, why are narcissists always angry at something? Agitated, unsettled, then flying around like a chicken who has no head and mad. And they act like everything is life or death when it doesn't even matter. And then it just says weirdos. They drive me nuts. Okay, I think I got your idea on that. They drive you nuts. They're weirdos. Chicken with a head cut off. Um, well, let's look at the core ingredients of narcissism. Narcissists want to be in control. Narcissists have to be superior. Narcissists have to cover their real self, and they put up a veneer of a false self. They're highly defensive. They manipulate people. And so when you say, why are they so easily angry? Well, when you come along and say, well, I'd like to do some things that don't include that. Well, what you're saying is stop doing whatever it is you're doing down at the core of your being because it doesn't work. And they are so non-insightful or so self-absorbed that it's like in their mind, they're thinking, you don't have the right to ask me to be healthy. I'm going to stay unhealthy. And so the very unhealthiness that they are committed to in their lives just makes them a guaranteed sitting duck for anger. Because who wants to be controlled by that person? So when they come across in their controlling way, somebody's going to buck against it. Or who wants to be the recipient of their non-empathy and their insensitivity? And again, people are going to be annoyed at that. And so, and it's going to generate agitation in the narcissist. And so by virtue of their unhealthy pattern of life and definition of who they are and foundation, it just makes them just highly, highly susceptible to anger and all the defensiveness and accusation that goes along with it. It's just their very being and doing runs counter to anything healthy, and it leaves them susceptible to the unhealthiness, which is all of that unwieldy anger that you get to be the recipient of. Okay. One last question here. This person says, Dr. C, with narcissists, it's all about power and control, passive aggressive behavior, shaming, criticizing, lying, and manipulation. Pretty bad list. With my ex-husband, he uses gifts to manipulate. And in his manipulation, he acts like he's about 6 years old, even though he's a 64-year-old man. What he can get in thinking about what he can get in this transaction. Could you explain the childish/adult combination in this particular behavior? Because I don't understand it. Okay, let's understand that that narcissists are all about collecting and keeping power and dominance and the position of control. Now, how does that relate to a little child? Well, children, a 6-year-old child, have often are sent the message, you're not in control here. If you do the wrong thing, you're going to get clobbered. If you give me the wrong answer, I'm going to be very disappointed in you and you're going to be judged. And so very early on, that budding narcissist, as they develop and can have more and more cogent kind of thoughts, they begin thinking, all right, I'm in the position where I'm the underling. How can I get control? And so what they'll do is tell secrets, or they'll deny, or they'll throw a temper tantrum. And it's their way of saying, I don't want you to just come down hard on me. Now, ideally, as adults witness this in little children, they can prove to be safe harbors for that child. And instead of coming down and saying, you will not be that way, the adult can say, well, I can tell you're feeling hurt or frustrated or confused. Let's talk about that. And I love talking with kids that way. And because over time, if you establish yourself as somebody who's safe, at least in a high percentage of the cases, they can come toward you and think, how about that? You're not going to yell at me and you're not going to call me names or send me to my room. It's like, well, what I'd like to do is just talk. I can tell you were frustrated. Let's discuss that. There might have been a really good reason for that. What was your reason? And let's take a look at your options. Narcissists in their early development did not have that experience, or if they did, it didn't soak in. And so here they are now, an adult, and they're still thinking, okay, I've got to keep power. And so I'm going to come up with all sorts of ways to maintain my power. In this case, I'll give you gifts. I'll do you favors. They're like that little kid thinking, whatever I can do to manipulate you not to reject me, then that's what I'm going to do. And they haven't learned what we refer to, or what I refer to as, emotional competence. Instead, it's all very reactive, and it's very dependent upon the person in front of them. And so you have a 64-year-old acting like a 6-year-old because they don't have inner strength. They're constantly seeking it from other people, just like children do. And children, though, at least they have the vantage point where they have time ahead of themselves where they can learn new patterns. 64-year-olds, not all of them, but a high percentage of them are stuck. Sometimes you get 64-year-old people that can say, I'm tired of this. Let's do something different. And they go into the healthier direction. A lot of times they don't. So it's all about power. Just like a little kid is seeking, how to find a position of power in their little powerless feeling that they carry. All right, guys, I hope you have a good holiday season. Here we are a week away from Christmas time, and some of you sharing that same tradition there. I hope it's a meaningful time for you. Others of you may not share in that same tradition, but nonetheless, I hope that you have a good time with family and perhaps get some time off to relax and relate well with people that you love and know. And now, again, this is the last live feed like this that we're going to have, but I'm going to continue to receive your questions, and then just continue to join me on Wednesday mornings at 10 Central, and then Saturday mornings at 10 Central as well. And I'm still going to be fielding your questions. I'll just be doing it a little bit of a different format. I really like hearing from you, and so know that it's a major part of my trying to intervene in a way that's hopefully positive for you. I'm so glad we have Team Healthy here. I love you guys, and I love what you stand for, and I love the fact that you're working hard at being a decent person. Dignity, respect, and civility. That's what we stand for, right? Okay, guys, I'll see you next time, and I hope you have a good holiday season. Bye for now.